These individuals all have one thing in common. They all claim to have been abducted by aliens at some point in their lives. Yet, many of them have more things in common than just that. Things that would seem completely unrelated to the abduction phenomenon. Take a close look at each of them, then take a look at the group as a whole. Does something seem a little strange about this picture?
There's an obvious, stark lack of much ethnic diversity among well-known alien abductees. A few videos ago, I mentioned that Black Biggot and I would be doing a collaboration that would be very controversial. Well, this is that video. Almost all of the abductees in this picture are from the US. That being the case, let's talk about the US population. America has been called the Great Melting Pot due to the rich blend of ethnic diversity in our population. Though those of European descent still make up the majority of the population, it's projected that by 2045 this will no longer be the case. According to the Census Bureau, in 2015, the U.S. population was found to be 62% white, 18% Hispanic, 12% Black, 5% Asian, and 3% other. So the question is this: why is it that the overwhelming majority of alleged abductees are white? Why do we not see an ethnic diversity in abductees that more closely represents a random cross-section of society? Two ethnic groups seem particularly underrepresented among American abductees: African Americans and Asians. The most famous African American abductee is Barney Hill. Interestingly, it just so happens that Barney and his wife Betty are also the first known American abductees. Just to the left of Barney Hill is a lady who looks like she could be mixed race. This is actually just a very tan picture of Jill Romanek, the wife of Stan Romanek. The only individual here of Asian lineage is a Russian politician who, incidentally, is a world-famous chess player, too. As I continued my research, I began to notice another interesting trend. There may be a higher than usual percentage of abductees who have strong Native American lineages. Notice how many of these individuals have the high cheekbone facial structure that is so common among Native Americans. This is just an observation on my part, and I have not been able to confirm a Native American lineage in most of these individuals. There may also be a disproportionately high percentage of Latino abductees, but once again, this would require a lot more research to confirm with certainty. Before we go any further, it would be prudent to address the fact that there are several minority self-proclaimed abductees that have not been included in this picture. For example, this gentleman appeared in a documentary entitled The Real 4400. This documentary explores the testimony of several individuals claiming to have experienced missing time related to the abduction phenomenon. I chose to exclude his case due to the lack of trace evidence, such as unexplained scars, lack of witnesses, and the fact that his abduction allegedly took place in his bedroom. These three factors combined lead me to the conclusion that the most likely explanation for this particular case is an episode of sleep paralysis. Now, I have personally experienced several frightening episodes of sleep paralysis over the years. The first time it happened to me, I had no idea what was going on. I was completely paralyzed with the exception of the fact that I could move my eyes. I could feel a heavy pressure pushing my body down into the mattress, but the pressure was the most intense around my throat. Though I did not experience any visual hallucinations, I did sense a very dark presence. Other times I experienced auditory hallucinations, such as hearing footsteps and whispers. Though I have not personally experienced visual hallucinations in my own experiences with sleep paralysis, visual hallucinations are commonly reported by other sufferers. Seemingly in all cases, people sense a dark presence. Many psychologists believe this dark presence frequently manifests itself with the culturally available script of an alien coming to abduct. I believe this to be the case with some, but not all, abduction stories. Another abduction claim I have omitted was from a 2011 upload on YouTube. The video has no description and is mostly unintelligible due to very poor audio. Nevertheless, I'll leave a link to it in the description. So we're back to this picture of mostly well-known abductees. One African American and one Russian with a Mongolian heritage. Not much diversity here. Furthermore, experts in the field of ufology seem to avoid this topic. So, what's really going on here?
In this video, we will look into several possible explanations while ruling out a few others. The four main points we will be discussing are as follows: blood type and Rh factor targeting, cultural trends in habitation, ethnic immuno-specificities, cultural bias, and worldviews. Let's start with blood types. There are four main blood types: A, B, AB, and O. This classification system refers to the presence or absence of specific surface antigens on red blood cells. Blood types are further broken down into positive and negative, which refers to the presence or absence of Rh factor. However, a strong correlation has been observed with self-identified abductees being of predominantly Rh negative blood types. Here's where things get interesting. People who are Rh negative make up only about 7 to 10% of the population worldwide. If we break this down by ethnic group, things get even more interesting. Rh negative blood is most common among white people of European descent, making up about 15% of that ethnic group. About 7% of the overall black population is Rh negative. Finally, only about 1% of the Asian population is Rh negative. These numbers vary to a small degree from source to source, but not by much. If you would like to read more about the correlation between Rh negative blood types and abduction cases, I've included several links in the description.
Cultural habitation. What I mean by this is that different ethnic groups tend to reside in areas with certain characteristics. The US is a very good example of this. Generally speaking, minorities in the US tend to gravitate toward more densely populated areas such as cities. Most big cities in the US, such as New York and Los Angeles, have a pretty good mix of all races. However, the further away from the city you go, the less ethnic diversity you'll see in the locals. Small communities in southern Appalachia are overwhelmingly white. Rural farming areas tend to be mostly white also. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, many abduction accounts come from secluded areas like these, where the population also happens to be predominantly white. So, does where you live make you more prone to abduction than your ethnicity? Ethnic immuno-specificities. Some ethnic groups are more susceptible to certain conditions and diseases, while other ethnic groups have a much higher defense against those conditions. Examples of conditions that affect certain ethnic populations more than others are numerous, but just to name a few, Tay-Sachs disease is found predominantly in those of Jewish heritage from Eastern Europe. 98% of those with sickle cell anemia are black. Fatal familial insomnia, while extremely rare, seems to mostly affect those of Italian heritage. Whites are about 5 times more likely to have cystic fibrosis than any other ethnic group. While only affecting about 1 in 4 Europeans, nearly 100% of Native Americans are lactose intolerant. I could go on, but the point is that some ethnic groups have stronger defenses against certain conditions than other groups. Now, suppose you're from an alien race that's particularly prone to a certain disease. You find that there's a certain ethnic pool of humans that seem to have a strong innate defense against that disease. If you're trying to find a cure for that disease, wouldn't it make sense for you to study the genetics of the group that seems to have some sort of genetic defense against that disease? Now, granted, this is all very hypothetical, but it's a possibility that's certainly worth mentioning. Cultural bias and worldviews. Some skeptics say that the quote-unquote mythology of ufology seems to be more a part of white culture than any other culture, and it therefore makes sense that most abduction accounts come from white people. This argument is weak for so many reasons. Reports of UFO sightings come from all races across the globe. If UFOs are just a white myth, then why are all races seeing them? Others speculate that the reason we don't often hear about Black or Asian abductees is not because they're not being abducted, but rather because they are less likely to talk about it. There may be certain cultural taboos or religious interpretations that would discourage some people from sharing their experience. The fear of being ostracized can be a strong motivating factor. The obvious flaw in this argument is that white people are no less afraid of being ostracized than any other ethnic group. Even so, cultural factors are important to consider, and this argument ought not simply be brushed off. Special thanks to Black Biggot for helping me out with this video. There's a link to his channel in the description, so head over there and subscribe to his channel as well. There's a few closing remarks I'd like to make, the first of which being my own thoughts on this topic. Of the possibilities discussed, there are two that I think are the most plausible. So many of these abductions have taken place in remote or secluded areas where frequently local populations tend to be more homogeneous with respect to a particular ethnic background. In the beginning of the video, I mentioned that there may also be a disproportionately high number of Native American and Hispanic abductees. I didn't talk about that much because I didn't find many sources to back that claim. However, I would like to point out that communities of these populations are also frequently found in secluded areas from North to South America. Now, of course, there are plenty exceptions. I'm simply stating my own personal observation. I'm also very intrigued with the unusually high numbers of negative RH abductees. I find it hard to believe that this could be a mere coincidence. But why this link is so prevalent, one can only speculate. Which of the possibilities discussed do you think is the most likely? Is there another explanation you can think of that was not discussed? And lastly, why do you suppose this bizarre trend in abductions has been widely overlooked? Let me know. Hey everyone, Drew here from Mad Cat Mysteries, and I hope you enjoyed the video you just watched. If you did, you can click on the subscribe button below. I'd appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.